When did you have to save someone you hated? I absolutely hated my coworker Marcus. He'd stolen the promotion I deserved, taken credit for my ideas in meetings, and made my life at our accounting firm miserable for 2 years. So when he started acting weird in November, my first thought was that he was finally cracking under pressure. Marcus had always been confident and loud, the type who dominated every conversation in the break room. But suddenly he was jumpy, constantly looking over his shoulder, checking his phone every few minutes like he was expecting terrible news. During team meetings, he'd stop mid-sentence and stare at the window like he'd seen something outside. When people asked if he was okay, he'd force a laugh and say he was just tired. I figured the stress of managing our department was finally getting to him, and honestly, I enjoyed watching him struggle. Then he started staying late every single night, way past when security usually made their rounds. I'd see his office light still on when I left at 6, and it would still be on when I arrived the next morning. His car would be in the same parking spot for days straight. When I asked him about it, he said he was working on a big client project and couldn't discuss details. But I walked past his office once around 9 p.m. and saw him just sitting there staring at his computer screen, not typing, not reading, just staring like he was afraid to leave the building. His appearance started declining rapidly. Marcus used to be obsessive about his suits and grooming, always looked like he stepped out of a business magazine, but now his clothes were wrinkled, his hair was messy, and he had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. People in the office started gossiping. Some thought he was having a nervous breakdown. Others wondered if he was using drugs. I thought he was just realizing he was in over his head with the promotion and couldn't handle the responsibility. The strange phone calls started in December. I'd see Marcus answer his phone, and his face would go completely pale. He'd step into empty conference rooms to take these calls, but I could see him through the glass walls. He'd be pacing back and forth frantically, running his hands through his hair, sometimes putting his head in his hands like he was receiving devastating news. After one of these calls, he came back to his desk and just sat there shaking for 20 minutes. When our boss asked him a direct question, Marcus didn't even hear him. He was completely zoned out, lost in his own world of whatever was terrorizing him. I started noticing other weird things. Marcus kept checking the parking lot from his office window, studying every car that pulled in. He'd get nervous whenever delivery guys came to the office. He started asking the receptionist detailed questions about who was visiting and why they were there. One afternoon, I saw him in the bathroom splashing cold water on his face repeatedly, like he was trying to stay alert or wake himself up. When he noticed me watching, he quickly pretended he was just washing his hands normally, but I could see his hands were visibly trembling. The breaking point came last Friday. I was working late finishing a quarterly report when I heard Marcus on a phone call in his office. His door was slightly open, and his voice was different than I'd ever heard it before. Desperate, pleading, broken. Please, I'm begging you. I did everything you asked. I can't keep this up anymore. There was a long silence. Then his voice cracked when he said, "No, you don't understand. If you do this, innocent people are going to get hurt." Another pause, then barely a whisper. "At least, let me warn them first." I heard his phone clatter onto his desk, and when I looked through the gap in his door, Marcus was sitting with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking like he was crying. That's when I realized Marcus wasn't having a breakdown. Someone was threatening him, and whatever they wanted him to do was about to happen. And from what I'd just heard, it involved other people in our office getting hurt. I was about to knock on his door when I heard footsteps in the hallway, and that's when I discovered who had been making Marcus's life hell for months. I freeze in the hallway as two men walk toward Marcus's office. One is Walter Green, our CEO, a man I've only seen in company-wide meetings and the occasional elevator ride. The other is a broad-shouldered man with a military haircut who I recognize as the head of company security, though I've never learned his name. Neither of them notices me standing there. They're focused entirely on Marcus's office, and something in their purposeful stride makes me step back into the shadows behind a large filing cabinet. I tell myself I'm being ridiculous, but some instinct keeps me hidden. Walter pushes Marcus's door fully open without knocking. "Working late again, Marcus?" Dedication I like to see. His voice carries a false cheerfulness that doesn't match the tension in his shoulders. I can't see Marcus from my position, but I hear his chair creak as he stands up. "Mr. Green, I wasn't expecting." "Sit down." Walter cuts him off, his friendly tone evaporating. The security chief closes the door, but it doesn't latch properly, leaving a thin gap through which their voices carry perfectly. "Did you prepare what I asked for?" Walter's voice is lower now, menacing. I need more time," Marcus says, his voice shaking. "The quarterly numbers don't line up with..." The security chief interrupts. "We're not here for excuses." Walter sighs heavily. Marcus, we've been patient. 6 weeks of patience, to be exact. The board meeting is Monday, and I need those financial records adjusted tonight. "But sir, what you're asking me to do is perfectly reasonable," Walter finishes for him. "All you need to do is move some numbers around. Nobody's going to notice or care." "It's fraud," Marcus whispers. There's a sudden bang, someone slamming a hand on a desk, and Marcus yelps. "Listen carefully," the security chief says. "Your daughter Ellie has soccer practice after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Your son Ryan takes piano lessons on Wednesday afternoons at the community center." The silence that follows is absolute. "What are you saying?" Marcus finally asks, his voice barely audible. "I'm saying we know their schedules," the security chief continues. "We have photos. Would you like to see them?" I hear rustling paper, and then Marcus makes a choked sound. "That's my kids at school. You've been just keeping an eye on your beautiful family," Walter says smoothly. "Think about them, Marcus. Think about what happens to them if you don't cooperate." "You can't threaten my family," Marcus says, but his voice has lost all conviction. Walter laughs. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences. If the board discovers millions missing from company accounts, they'll need someone to blame. All the evidence points to you, Marcus. Your login credentials, your authorizations, your signature. Who do you think they'll believe? The CEO with a spotless record, or the department head who's been embezzling funds? But I haven't taken anything. The evidence says otherwise," the security chief says, "and evidence is all that matters." I'm frozen in place, barely breathing. This explains everything. Marcus's paranoia, the phone calls, his deteriorating appearance. He's being blackmailed by our own CEO. "I need those adjusted records on this drive," Walter says. Tonight. No more excuses. And if I do this, Marcus asks, defeated, then your family stays safe and you keep your job, Walter says. For now. I hear keyboard clicking, then silence. Several minutes pass before Walter speaks again. Good choice, Marcus. We'll be watching. I press myself deeper into the shadows as the door opens and the two men exit. They walk past without noticing me, their footsteps fading down the hallway. I wait until I hear the elevator doors close before I step out and enter Marcus's office. He's sitting at his desk, staring at nothing. A USB drive on the desk in front of him. Marcus, I say quietly. He jumps violently, knocking over a cup of pens. Jesus, how long have you been there? Long enough, I say, closing the door behind me. I heard everything. The color drains from his already pale face. You need to leave, right now. Forget what you heard. They're blackmailing you, I say. Walter is embezzling money and setting you up to take the fall. Marcus looks around frantically, then lowers his voice to a whisper. The security cameras. They'll see you here, talking to me. He points to a small camera in the corner of his office. Tell me what's happening, I insist. Marcus runs his hands through his hair, which looks like he's been doing that all day. Walter's been siphoning millions through fake vendor accounts for over a year. When I noticed discrepancies in the November audit, he called me in. I thought he'd want to fix it, but he laughs bitterly. He told me to forget what I saw. When I wouldn't, things escalated. The phone calls, the threats, Marcus nods. They've been following me, following my family. They have photos of my kids at school, at their activities. Walter said if I don't help cover his tracks, he'll make it look like I'm the one who took the money. His voice breaks. Or worse, we need to go to the police. No, Marcus almost shouts. Walter has connections with the police department. He made sure I knew that. Please, you need to leave before they find out, you know. They'll come after you too. I look at the broken man in front of me, the coworker I've hated for 2 years, and see real fear in his eyes. The security cameras only show me entering your office, I say slowly. They don't record audio. As far as anyone knows, I just stopped by to ask about a client file. Marcus looks up at me, confused. Why would you help me? You hate me. I don't have a good answer. I don't know yet, but I'm not walking away knowing innocent people could get hurt. He shakes his head. You don't understand what you're getting into. Then explain it to me, I say, pulling up a chair. Everything. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus tells me about Walter's scheme, how he created shell companies, falsified invoices, and moved millions offshore, how Walter threatened to frame Marcus when he discovered it, and how the threats escalated to include his family. I'll help you gather evidence, I finally say. Properly this time, not what Walter wants. They'll kill us both, Marcus whispers. Not if we're careful, I reply, though I'm not nearly as confident as I sound. We need to establish secure communication. Burner phones only. Nothing through company email or personal devices. Marcus stares at me for a long moment. Why are you doing this? After everything I've done to you? I stand up, heading for the door. I haven't figured that out yet, but right now, that doesn't matter. As I leave his office, Marcus calls after me quietly. Be careful. Walter has officers on his payroll. If they catch you. I nod, understanding the unspoken threat. Walking to the elevator, I wonder what the hell I'm doing, risking my safety for someone I've hated for years. But the image of Walter and his security chief threatening a man's family keeps replaying in my mind. Sometimes, I realize it doesn't matter who needs saving, only that they need to be saved. I spent the next morning at my desk, pretending to work while actually researching Walter Green. My screen was angled away from the hallway, and I kept a spreadsheet open in another window I could quickly click to if anyone walked by. Walter's company bio was predictably glowing. Harvard MBA, philanthropic foundation, mentions of his visionary leadership and commitment to integrity. The irony made me sick. Digging deeper into news archives revealed a pattern. Walter had been at 3 different companies before ours. At each one, there had been whispers of financial irregularities that never quite materialized into formal investigations. What caught my attention was an article from 6 years ago about the sudden death of Richard Harmon, CFO at Walter's previous company. Richard Harmon, 52, died yesterday in what police are calling a tragic accident when his car veered off Mountain View Road and into Lake Chatham. Harmon leaves behind a wife and 3 children. Sources close to Harmon indicate he had recently expressed concerns about company finances and was scheduled to meet with regulators the following week. I stared at the article, my hands suddenly cold. This wasn't just embezzlement. This was something far more dangerous. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, sent from the burner phone we'd established contact on last night. W watching me, audit announced. Be careful. As if on cue, Walter's voice boomed through our department. Surprise audit, everyone! Nothing to worry about if your books are in order. He laughed, clapping Marcus on the shoulder as he passed his office. Marcus's face was ashen, his smile so forced it looked painful. I waited until 1 a.m. that night before returning to the office. The security guard, Ron, knew me as someone who occasionally worked late, so he just nodded as I badged in. Another late one, huh? Quarterly reports, I said with an exaggerated sigh. You know how it is. Once upstairs, I slipped into my darkened department and made my way to Marcus's office. He'd given me his login credentials, written on a slip of paper he'd made me memorize before he burned it. I logged in, feeling my heart pound as the accounting database loaded. For the next hour, I methodically traced the money. Walter had created a sophisticated web of shell companies, but once I knew what to look for, the pattern was clear. Invoices for consulting services that were never performed. Equipment purchases for items that never arrived. All told, $4.3 million had been siphoned to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands over the past 18 months. I was downloading the evidence to an encrypted drive when I heard the elevator ding. I quickly shut everything down and slid under Marcus's desk, barely breathing as footsteps approached. Through the gap under the door, I could see the beam of a flashlight sweeping the hallway. Hello? Anyone here? It was Ron, doing his 2 a.m. walkthrough. I remained perfectly still as the light paused at Marcus's door, then continued down the hall. Only when I heard the elevator doors close again did I crawl out, finish the download, and leave as quietly as I could. The next day, I found something under my desk. A small black disc, no bigger than a quarter, a listening device. I left it in place, but started being extremely careful about what I said at my desk. That afternoon, Marcus called me to his office, ostensibly to discuss a client file. His office had been ransacked ransacked overnight. Drawers pulled out, papers scattered. Most telling were the family photos on his desk, the glass deliberately shattered in their frames. "They know," he whispered, handing me a folder as if we were discussing work. "They're sending a message. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop 15 miles away after work. I took 3 different buses to get there, constantly checking to make sure I wasn't followed. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, his hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. They went to my house last night," he said without preamble. "My wife called me hysterical. 2 men parked across the street for hours, just watching. I found everything," I told him, keeping my voice low. "Walter's taken $4.3 million. I have the records, the transfers, everything." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. "It won't be enough. Walter has too many connections. We need more." When I returned to my apartment that night, a black SUV was parked across the street. The security chief sat behind the wheel, making no attempt to hide. He watched me enter my building, his face expressionless. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mind your own business." I was shaking as I pulled the blinds closed, checking every room in my small apartment, half expecting to find someone waiting for me. My phone rang. It was Marcus's wife. "There's someone following Ellie," she sobbed. "She's only 16. They followed her home from school today. She's terrified." I made a decision then. I had an old college friend, Jamie, who worked for the FBI now. We hadn't spoken in months, but this was beyond workplace drama or corporate fraud. This was threatening children. Jamie agreed to meet me for lunch the next day. I was explaining everything when my phone rang. Walter's assistant. "Mr. Green would like to see you in his office at 3 p.m. today to discuss a potential promotion opportunity," she said pleasantly. The promotion discussion was anything but. Walter sat behind his massive desk, smiling at me like we were old friends. "You've been very industrious lately," he said, sliding a folder across to me. Inside was a check for $50,000. "A token of my appreciation for your discretion." "I don't understand," I said, playing dumb. Walter's smile didn't falter. "I think you do. Marcus has been acting erratically, making accusations. I'd hate to see a promising young professional like yourself get caught up in his issues." I left the check on his desk. I should get back to work. As I reached the door, Walter's voice stopped me. "Your mother lives in Phoenix, doesn't she? On Sycamore Drive? I hear it's a lovely neighborhood." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. "Just something to think about," Walter continued pleasantly. "Family is so important." I walked out, my mind racing. Walter had just threatened my mother. I needed to warn her, to get her somewhere safe. But first, I needed evidence of this threat. I reached into my pocket and stopped the recording app on my phone, my hands shaking as I saved the file. The game had changed. This wasn't just about saving Marcus anymore. It was about saving ourselves. I called Jamie the next morning from a gas station payphone, paranoid about using my cell after Walter's threat. The call connected after 3 rings. "I've been waiting to hear from you," Jamie said, skipping any greeting. "Our team has been building a case against Walter Green for months." My knees nearly buckled with relief. "You already know about him?" "We've had our eye on him since his last company. That accident with his former CFO, we couldn't prove it wasn't an accident, but it raised serious flags. Walter's careful though. We've never had enough evidence to move forward." I leaned against the payphone booth, watching cars pass by. "I have evidence. Concrete evidence. The transfers, the shell companies, everything." "That changes things," Jamie said, her voice sharpening. "How soon can you get it to me?" "Today. But there's something else. He's threatening families now. Marcus's kids, my mother." Jamie was quiet for a moment. "We need to move fast. I want you to wear a wire." The executive meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. I arrived early, the wire itching against my skin beneath my shirt. Jamie's team had fitted me with it that morning, showing me how to activate it and warning me not to adjust it once it was in place. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Ellie followed home again yesterday. Car parked outside all night. Wife terrified." I didn't have time to respond before Walter strode into the conference room, followed by the security chief and several board members. Walter looked confident, even smug, as he took his place at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began, his voice grave. "I've called this emergency meeting because I've discovered something deeply troubling." He nodded to the security chief, who distributed folders to everyone present. I opened mine to find fabricated evidence, suggesting Marcus had been embezzling company funds. "As you can see," Walter continued, "Marcus Thompson has been stealing from this company for over a year. The evidence is irrefutable." The board members murmured among themselves, examining the documents. My heart pounded so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. "I've already contacted the authorities," Walter said. "They'll be here shortly to take him into custody." I cleared my throat, and all eyes turned to me. "Actually, Mr. Green, I have some information that contradicts these findings." Walter's smile froze. "This isn't the time for interruptions." "I think it is," I said, standing up. I pulled out my own folder and began distributing copies of the evidence I'd gathered. "These are the real financial records. They show that $4.3 million has been siphoned to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, accounts controlled by Walter Green." The room went silent. Walter's face darkened as board members began examining my documents. "This is absurd," he sputtered. "This person is clearly working with Marcus to cover up their scheme," I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. "I also have recordings of Mr. Green threatening Marcus's family if he didn't falsify financial records, and threatening my mother just yesterday when I refused his bribe." The board chair, a stern woman in her 60s, looked up from the papers. "Is this true, Walter?" "Of course not." Walter slammed his fist on the table. "This is slander. I'll have you fired and sued for everything you're worth." I pulled out my phone and played the recording from yesterday's meeting with Walter. His voice filled the room, crystal clear. "Your mother lives in Phoenix, doesn't she? On Sycamore Drive? I hear it's a lovely neighborhood. Just something to think about. Family is so important." Walter lunged across the table at me, his face contorted with rage. "You little—" Two board members grabbed him while the security chief, reading which way the wind was blowing, stepped back with his hands raised. "Get him out of here," the board chair ordered. Security guards appeared at the door, summoned by another board member. As they escorted Walter out, he twisted toward me. "This isn't over. You think you're safe? I have people everywhere. Your mother, your friends, they'll all pay for this." The board chair immediately called the company attorneys, who arrived within minutes. While they conferred in hushed tones, I texted Jamie. Now, within 20 minutes, FBI agents swarmed the building with search warrants for Walter's office, the server room, and financial records. Jamie nodded to me as she passed, leading a team toward Walter's office. I was answering questions from a federal agent when Marcus burst into the conference room, his face flushed. "Is it true?" he demanded. "They're saying Walter's been arrested." He never finished his sentence. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the floor with a sickening thud. Someone shouted for an ambulance while I knelt beside him, loosening his tie. His breathing was shallow, his pulse racing beneath my fingers. "Heart attack," a board member who was a former doctor said, kneeling beside us. "Keep him comfortable until the ambulance arrives." The next few hours passed in a blur. Marcus was rushed to the hospital while FBI agents combed through the building, seizing computers and files. The security chief, seeing the writing on the wall, approached Jamie. "I want immunity," I overheard him say. "I know things about Walter that nobody else knows. About the previous CFO's accident." I sat in the hospital waiting room that evening, exhausted beyond words. Marcus's wife paced nearby, her face drawn with worry. The doctor finally emerged with news that Marcus was stable. The heart attack had been mild, caught in time. When I was finally allowed to see him, Marcus looked small against the white hospital sheets, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. His eyes fluttered open as I approached. "You saved me," he whispered. "Why?" I shook my head, still not entirely sure myself. "Because it was the right thing to do. After everything I did to you," he began. "We'll talk about that when you're better," I said, awkwardly patting his hand. Our conversation was interrupted by a nurse informing me I had a visitor. In the hallway waited a well-dressed woman I recognized from company photos as Walter's wife. "I need to speak with you," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Walter has evidence at our home. Documents, a second set of books, everything. He never thought anyone would look there. Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes hardened. "Because I've spent 15 years married to a monster who threatened children. I want him to pay for everything he's done." I called Jamie immediately, who sent agents to secure the evidence before Walter could have it destroyed. When I finally left the hospital that night, the company had been placed under temporary management. The board chair had asked me to help with the transition. Given my knowledge of the financial situation, I was bone-tired as I walked to my car in the parking garage, my footsteps echoing in the empty space. Something felt wrong as I approached my vehicle. I paused, then knelt down to check underneath it, a habit I'd developed after finding the listening device. In the dim light, I could see the dark puddle forming beneath the front of my car. I reached under carefully and touched my fingers to the liquid. They came back slick with brake fluid. I stared at my hand, a chill running through me. If I hadn't checked, if I'd driven home tonight. I called Jamie again with shaking hands. This had gone beyond embezzlement and threats. Walter was playing for keeps now, and I was squarely in his crosshairs. I wake up to my phone buzzing at 5:43 a.m. "It's Jamie. We got him," she says, her voice tense with excitement. Walter was trying to board a private flight to the Cayman Islands. Had a suitcase with over $200,000 in cash and 3 different passports. I sit up in bed, my mind clearing instantly. "He's in custody? Being processed right now. I thought you'd want to know immediately." I exhale slowly, realizing I've been holding my breath for days. "Thank you." After we hang up, I sit in the darkness of my apartment, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. I'd moved my mother to a hotel under a different name the night before, after finding my brake lines cut. Now I can call and tell her it's over. The hospital corridor smells of antiseptic and stale coffee as I make my way to Marcus's room. It's been 3 days since his collapse, and the doctors say he's recovering well from the heart attack. When I enter, he's sitting up in bed, looking pale but better than before. "They got Walter," I tell him, setting down the coffee I brought, trying to flee the country. Marcus closes his eyes briefly, his shoulders sagging with relief. "My wife told me this morning. The FBI called her." He looks at me, really looks at me, for the first time in days. "You saved my family." I shrug, uncomfortable with his gratitude. "I just did what needed to be done." "No," he insists, his voice stronger. "You had every reason to walk away. I've been terrible to you for years." The silence stretches between us, filled with the beeping of monitors and the distant sounds of the hospital. "Why did you do it?" he finally asks. "After everything?" I've been asking myself the same question since that night I overheard Walter threatening him. I don't know. At first, I just couldn't walk away knowing innocent people might get hurt. Then it became something more. Marcus nods slowly. "I don't deserve your help." "Probably not," I agree with a small smile. "But here we are." The company feels different when I return. The board chair intercepts me in the lobby, pulling me into a conference room where several board members are waiting. "We'd like you to serve as interim department head during the transition," she says without preamble. "You know the financial situation better than anyone, and we need someone we can trust." I blink in surprise. "I'm honored, but this isn't charity," she interrupts. "You've demonstrated integrity and competence under extraordinary pressure. The company needs that right now." Later that day, news breaks that Walter's offshore accounts have been frozen and his assets seized. The FBI estimates they'll recover nearly 80% of the stolen funds. I'm reviewing department files when my phone rings. It's Jamie again. The security chief is singing like a canary. She says, "He's confirmed Walter was behind the accident that killed his previous CFO. Says Walter paid a mechanic to tamper with the brakes. Just like mine?" I think with a chill. "There's something else," Jamie continues. "Walter's wife has filed for divorce. She's cooperating fully, turning over documents, financial records, everything." "Good for her," I say, remembering the determined look in her eyes when she told me about the evidence hidden in their home. The next few weeks pass in a blur of federal investigations, board meetings, and rebuilding the company's shattered systems. I work closely with the FBI forensic accountants, tracing every penny Walter stole and establishing new protocols to prevent it from happening again. Former employees begin coming forward with stories about Walter's suspicious activities they'd noticed, but been afraid to report, veiled threats they'd received when asking questions. Each testimony strengthens the case against him and reveals how extensively he'd corrupted the company. Marcus returns to work after 3 weeks, thinner and quieter than before. The board, on my recommendation, creates a new position for him, compliance officer. His job is to to ensure financial transparency and report directly to the board, bypassing any potential future corruption in the executive suite. We work side by side, establishing new accountability systems. Our previous antagonism has transformed into something resembling mutual respect. One evening, as we're reviewing audit procedures, Marcus clears his throat awkwardly. "I need to tell you something," he says, not meeting my eyes. "Those ideas I took credit for in the Henderson project and the quarterly reporting system, I knew they were yours. I deliberately presented them as my own." I stopped typing, surprised not by the admission but by his willingness to make it. "I was insecure," he continues, terrified of failing. "Your ideas were better, and he shrugs helplessly. "I was a coward." "Yes, you were," I agree, but without the anger that would have accompanied those words 2 months ago. "I'm sorry," he says simply. I nod, accepting his apology without needing to verbalize forgiveness. Some things are better expressed through actions than words. 6 months later, the company has largely recovered. Most of the stolen funds have been returned, and new leadership has restored client confidence. The board makes my position permanent, with a significant raise and expanded responsibilities. Walter's trial is mercifully brief. With overwhelming evidence in the security chief's testimony, he's sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy in the death of his former CFO. I attend the sentencing hearing, sitting in the back of the courtroom. Walter looks smaller somehow, his expensive suits replaced by standard-issue court attire, his commanding presence diminished to nothing. As they lead him away, he glances back, and our eyes meet briefly. I feel nothing, not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity, just a profound relief that it's over. That evening, I receive a text from Marcus. "Sarah and the kids wanted me to invite you for dinner tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just a thank you." I hesitate, my thumb hovering over the screen. 2 months ago, I would have declined immediately. Now, I find myself typing, "I'd like that. What can I bring?" His response comes quickly. "Just yourself. We owe you everything." As I set my phone down, I realize something fundamental has shifted. I no longer hate Marcus Thompson. The man who stole my promotion, took credit for my ideas, and made my work life miserable for 2 years has become someone I respect, maybe even someone I could call a friend. It's a strange feeling, this absence of hatred. In its place is something unexpected, understanding. We've both been changed by what happened to him, by the terror of being trapped in Walter's scheme, me by the choice to help someone I despised. Sometimes saving someone you hate ends up saving a part of yourself you didn't know needed saving. The part that remembers we're all human, all flawed, all capable of both terrible mistakes and genuine redemption. I pick up my phone again and add to my response, "See you tomorrow." And Marcus, we're even now.